Howdy, good morning. This is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And today we're going to be jumping into episode 10 of Corporate Cardboard. I'm here with my host, Dan from Chairman of the Board. How are you doing today, Dan?
Yeah, very good today, Mackenzie. Always glad to be back and on your channel talking about some more great board games. So yeah, happy to get started.
All right. And that being said, get started we shall. And we're going to jump right into our first section with what we've been playing. So this is a pretty self-explanatory section. If this is the first time you've been on to Corporate Cardboard, we're just going to talk about a couple of games each that we've been playing and, give our initial opinions, thoughts, or continued opinions if you've been exploring any new content. So Dan, what do you got first for me today?
Okay, so I'm going to start today with a big one. Very popular game called Spirit Island. So finally got around to playing Spirit Island. And to be honest, I played it 3 times, twice solo, once as a 2-player. And I'm still really struggling to formulate my thoughts about this one because it's a strange game. The actual rules themselves aren't too bad. They're quite digestible considering this game is weighted at 4 out of 5 out of weight complexity. But I'm still getting my head around those core mechanisms of the slow powers and the fast powers. I'm just really bad at this so far. I think this is a game that's going to reward repeated plays. If you don't know what Spirit Island is, this is a cooperative game where you are taking the role of these kind of ancient spirits. You've got like your water spirits, you've got like these phoenix kind of spirit and all these different things. They all have their different specialities, all the different strengths and weaknesses. And you're trying to work together to try and fight off these invaders or these colonists who are coming onto your island to try and scare them off, basically. But as I mentioned earlier, this game, you're playing cards, you're generating energy to play these cards, but some of these powers activate quickly, so instantly, and some of them happen after the invaders do their part of the game. And kind of mapping that puzzle out in your head and when these things are going to trigger and the best way to do things, knowing what's coming next, what you've got to prepare for next round, it really is quite a conundrum. And I found that thing quite, really quite a struggle to get my head around and how to play these cards most efficiently, but really enjoying it. I think it's got a lot of upsides to it, and definitely positive initial vibes, but I do still feel like I need to play this a few more times before I can really articulate my thoughts on this one. But yeah, so far so good. Spirit Island. I know you're a fan of this one, Mackenzie.
I am. I really like this whole system. I love the way it works. I love the upgrades of the spirits, the passive growth as you just continue to play the game. You get stronger as it goes on. I love that in games. And I think this does it really, really well. In particular, what you're saying to those slow and fast power cards, you're totally correct. That's where the complexity of this game really comes from, are the spirits, their growth, and the interaction with the cards. You have to pick them for the symbols. You're trying to pick them for their speeds. You have to evaluate them right away when you get them because you're like, okay, am I going to use this now, or is it even worth taking the time to set it up? I totally agree with you, and I think you're totally right. The more you play this, the more you'll understand and be able to evaluate those cards more, and this is just how a game of this complexity is, and I think you nailed it on the head there. With the core system is super friendly to jump into, but you start looking and reading the abilities and stuff, and you're just like, oh my god, I understand why it is so deep.
Yeah, and I love the variety and what these powers can do. You've got these really aggressive spirits who can just blast the hell out of all the different people, and you've got the more kind of nuanced ones which are pushing and pulling things around the map just at the right time so you can fight back and defend yourself without taking the damage. It's extremely clever, and when you get a game like this to the table, I'm always fascinated by games that I could no way in a million years make myself. I love it when these designers have these brains that are just so clever. But yeah, this is a really great design. I wanted to get your thoughts, Mackenzie, on
yes,
on how you would tackle this game solo. So do you think you should play as one spirit, or do you think you should maybe take a 2-handed approach and play as not only your spirit, but maybe another dummy player as well?
So in my opinion, for this game, the best experience for this is probably a 2-handed solo game. So playing 2 spirits. That being said, if you're getting familiar with the game, just play 1. You're still going to have a great time. You're still going to enjoy exploring your spirits one at a time. You're going to enjoy exploring the cards, how they work. You're going to start getting more comfortable with the adversaries running the deck. So my recommendation for you, since you're still getting comfortable with it, just play 1 spirit, and that's okay. You only have to deal with one board. You're not having to run through like a bunch of maintenance phases, and then you're able to really focus on their cards and your planning. So, and I really enjoy it. The way that I play the most, honestly, is just the single spirit, even though I know that the cross combination and figuring out those different abilities between the two is really good in the two-handed solo mode. So that'd be my recommendation. Play that single-handed solo, because I do think it's a fun experience and you get to really dig into those spirits.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's what my gut feeling told me, and it felt right me playing it that way up to this point. So yeah, thank you.
And I'm glad that it does work so well with just a single solo board, and it's built for that. And I think that's awesome. You can really play true solo and still have a great time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So the first game that I want to talk about is a game that I love. I think this is in the running for my number one from 2021. This is Sleeping Gods. And in particular, I want to talk about the expansion. So I'm starting my 6th campaign of Sleeping Gods right now. It's one that I just continuously jump into. It's such a short and concise campaign. It's only, I think it's 18 times 3, so 36, 40, 50... Is it 52, 52, 54, 54? There it is. 54 different events, essentially 54 turns. And on those turns, you're doing 2 actions. And eventually, the game's just over. So you have a hard time limit on this. But what I've been jumping into is the Tides of Ruin expansion and the Dungeons expansion. So I actually picked the wrong one. Whoops. So this is the the dungeon expansion is what I'm looking at. So in here, the dungeon expansion is a... Oh my gosh, I can't spell today. So the dungeon expansion is a series of these large boards. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be jumping into these dungeons if you find a specific location on the map. So at the start of the game, you'll circle specific locations. And if you're there, as your main action for the turn, you can start an exploration into the dungeon. And I think this is super cool because you're able to get a little bit more in depth when it comes to specific explorations. There are these large maps that the designer has created and said, hey, I've created a bunch of puzzles in here, and this really harkens to something like, a stand-in Dungeons and Dragons dungeon crawl, where you've got a map, you're jumping from place to place, you're picking up tokens that represent different characters or cards you might interact with, and it's a very straightforward, simple concept. Have you seen any coverage on this at all?
I've seen lots of it pop up, and to be honest, I've not even slightly had a look into any of these Ryan Lockett games, and I think it's getting to a point now where I really need to, because I've not heard a single bad word about any of these games. So no, I don't know anything about them at all, apart from they're massively praised.
Gotcha. So honestly, a lot of Ryan Lockett's other games are just pretty average to me. We don't actually own any others in our library. We've played them and then they've been sent off. But this is one that is stuck. So Sleeping Gods is incredible in its exploration. This is my favorite exploration game, period. It does it the best. It handles that story-driven gameplay extremely well. Your decisions always matter. You're failing forward in your skill tests. There's a lot to customize and to be aware of. And the game is not a pushover. It's a super challenging yet satisfying experience. And the dungeons here, I think, are a interesting addition. So I've been through a couple of dungeons now, just playing through the core game, and it changes up the formula slightly. So in the main game, when you're trying to explore, you have to go from island to island. You're moving your ship around, you're doing things, and then it's you get 2 actions, and that's it. So only have 2 chances to interact with the storybook. Now, when you're playing with the Dungeons expansion, though, it changes it up slightly. You're kind of interrupting your main action, and you're going to instead hang out in this dungeon and go from room to room. You can do this as often as you like, and sometimes you might want to rest and kind of restore some of your energy. If you do that, though, you're going to lose one of your turns for the main game. So you have to decide, is it worth pursuing further into this dungeon to potentially get more rewards, or do I just leave and start a new day and go back and sail out on the ocean? So this one really has you spending a lot of time in the same area in a specific setting. And I'm not sure how I feel about this, if we're being honest. I love the event system. I love the snappy pace. This is going to extend the game time for your game. It's also going to have a little bit more fiddliness to it, because you're going to be needing to find these tokens, and there's like a whole alphabet of them, essentially, and they're going to represent different things. Like one might be a backpack or a key or something like that. So this adds a lot of little tokens, a lot of little things, and one of my favorite things about the core game as a whole is that it's just so seamless. It's so good. It's like everything just makes sense. Everything is there. It's presented extremely well. This one adds a lot of new things, but it does so by kind of forfeiting that elegance that I really enjoy in the original. So I'm still exploring. I'm not going to get too deep into spoilers here, but if you are interested in playing this expansion, it is super easy to integrate, because all you got to do is you write on the board that, hey, this is where the dungeon is. And then when you get there, you just place it onto the side of the map where your ship isn't. And then that becomes the board that you're exploring in. You go from room to room. There's different areas that have locks. There's little puzzles in there like usual. And it's kind of like a small version of the big map where all of the answers for like the puzzles are contained, as opposed to outside in the world, and you're going to have to figure out where they are and what they mean. So it's an interesting addition. I'm not sure it's one that you need, personally, but I think it's a very easy one to integrate if you do have it. So I like that. It's very much a, do you want to explore this? You can, but it's not necessary. And I think that's great for a game like this. So that's my experience with Sleeping Gods, particularly the Dungeons expansion. And really quick, I have Tim here. Good to see you this morning, Tim. He says, always impressed by players that can play very complicated solo games. So there you go. Dan, you got a fan.
Trust me, it's nothing that anybody else couldn't do if I can do it. Right, cool. Yeah, just on Sleeping Gods, Mackenzie.
Yes.
Obviously, it's more of a, I suppose, a campaign, or at least you know, driven story, longer arc story. How easy is this one to, say, pack up and then get back to the table?
So this game,
is it a bit of an obstacle?
I think that this one is, it's not the worst to pack up and get to the table, because you're not setting up a board. Because generally in these large dungeon crawlers, you have to make a map. This one's really easy. You just open up the book, which is super nice. I love that. The big difference, though, is in this, you have characters. And every time you play this game, there are 9 distinct characters that you use in every single game. And each of these characters has their own tokens, you know, conditions, health, and stuff. So when you pack it up, you're actually going to put each of those in their own separate plastic bag. And so it's not too bad, because all of the characters' things are all grouped together. But it also is kind of annoying and tedious to, when you start a new game, you got to be like, okay, got to pull out this character from this bag, reset his things, pull out this stuff. So this is one that just lives on the table, so we don't have to worry about it. And then whenever we're feeling like it, we just jump to it and just keep on playing. So I really like this one, though. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It has that urgency, because you're like, okay, I only have a certain amount of time to get this done, to explore. And 6 campaigns in, and every game has been completely different. I think we've only had overlap on like 3 events in the whole 6 campaign experiences, which is insane. Wow. So super pleased, super impressed. And I have a feeling at the end of this one, we're doing the dungeon thing, right? So even more new stuff. So I'm excited to continue. It's a great one. I like Sleeping Gods a lot. I think if you're going to start a Ryan Maka game, or even like a campaign game, it's a great place to do it. I think it's so well done. Okay.
Yeah, I think one day I would like to get around to that one.
Excellent.
Okay, cool. So the second game I want to talk about that I've been playing is a game called My Farm Shop. So this, if you're not aware, this is kind of the newest take on the classic Macchiatorro mechanism, where you're rolling a bunch of dice, or 2 dice, or in this example, 3 dice. And then you're using the result of those to trigger something on your own little player board, which will be like collecting resources, and once you roll these things, the other people are triggering theirs as well. But in My Farm Shop, you actually roll 3 dice. You use 2 of them to trigger your ones on your board, and you use the other one in order to collect a card from the kind of communal board to put a new card onto your player board. And you can cover up these different slots already that you've already placed on the board, making your, collecting resources faster, or converting resources into points. You can even do these really cool things where if you land on a certain spot, it can point you to another spot. So you can kind of force yourself to be a bit more efficient and to keep hitting the spots that you want to hit. And I will say, I like this one masses more than I liked the other 2 that I mentioned, Macchiatorro, Space Base. For some reason, I always had it in my back of my head that there's something here in this mechanism that I'd like. And for one reason or another, it never landed for me when it was those other games. But with this one, it just felt right. This is the game I wanted when it came to that system. And it's hard to pinpoint why, but I think a lot of it is because of some of the mitigation you get in this one. So This one, you actually collect these sacks, these burlap sacks, which means that whenever you spend these, you can actually mitigate or roll the pip value up or down for each sack you spend. So something like Castles of Burgundy with the workers, a bit like that. And for me, that just added so much more freedom and so much more openness to the game, where you could really focus on what you want to do and keep hitting the spots that you want, but still having that pressure of having that income of sacks in the first place. And I just like the little engines you can get in this one. You can really pinpoint your strategy on what you want to do. Do you want to just focus on getting as much wool as you possibly can in order to convert that into points, because you might have some really good conversion spots there. I really like the pacing of the game as well, because it's a pretty rapid game. It only takes about half an hour, 40 minutes or so. But the deck is layered, so initially the cards aren't so strong, but when you get to that level 3, level 4 in the deck, it starts getting a lot more strong actions you can take with your turns. And as I said, it just felt right for me, this one. It's such a nice intro level game, but it still has enough to keep you interested. I don't mind the look of the game in that itself. I think it's perfectly fine. I think the box cover was a bit of a turn off for me. I really hate that box cover. It just seems like some kind of mobile app farming game. That's what it looks like to me.
You don't like Farmville?
No. But yeah, I was really happy with it. A really good Dawn design, and I was doubtful that it was going to be as good as it would be, because again, I've been let down by the other two. But this one was just on the money for me. So really happy with my farm shop.
That's really cool. So I've heard a lot of different things about this game, negatives and positive. So I'm glad you really enjoyed it. It's really funny. A lot of the things that you mentioned here are unique, and I think that's really cool. Like you said, that mitigation is huge, particularly for a dice game like this. I love the sandbag mechanism, and it looks like here on the cards that some of the cards you buy provide those sandbags as rewards for getting them. And that's so cool, because if you want to focus on the mitigation, you can make that part of your strategy. That's so sweet.
Absolutely, yeah. And one thing as well that I know we've talked about Space Base quite a lot actually over the weeks. I really like in this game that when when other people's turns, when other people are taking their turns, rather than just getting the kind of backup option you get, like in Space Base, you get the red cards, you get the coins, whatever. In this one, you get your whole full blown action. So that for me just feels so much more satisfying. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this one at the moment.
I'm glad to hear that. This is one that I'm going to have to check out once again. Anytime you give something positive praise, I usually have to look into it.
I don't want to blow this one out with proportion, because it is what it is. But it does what it does really well. And, for that weight of game, so easy to explain, but it still has that you can really tailor what you want with your board, and it feels satisfying when what you want pulls off. Very happy with it.
That's excellent. I'm glad to hear that. Sweet. So that's my farm shop. Now, the game that I'm going to talk about is one that I don't think gets enough love, but it's by a very popular designer. This is the board game Nitwit. So this is from Matt Leoch, and it's a party game that revolves around the use of Venn diagrams. Now, there's many games that are similar to this that use the Venn diagram system, but I think that this game's production is insane. The first time that I played this game, I was just over the moon with how it set up, how it played, and just my experience overall. I couldn't believe it. It was just so fun, so cool. Now, in my day job, I am a teacher, and this is one that I use a lot in my teaching, just in teaching in general. It's great for comparing and contrasting. It's beautiful. Kids enjoy the system, but let's just take a moment to appreciate this thing. So this game, right off the bat, comes with this amazing looking display. You're going to be pulling these spools that are filled with this different colored thread, and each person is going to be putting one of these twines, putting them on the board, attaching a tag to it, and placing this spool onto the board somewhere. And the board just evolves with each player placing them. So we place one at a time, we keep putting these out, and then after you place it, you're going to have a board that has something to look like this, where you're going to have all of these large spools that are covered in this thread, and they're making these circles. Now, this picture doesn't do it justice, in my opinion, but when you see this on the board, you're just like, wow, this is This is really fascinating, really neat. I think this one's a little bit better here. And each of these tags shows something. And you're going to be playing a word game similar to something like Boggle, where you have to say, or I guess not Boggle, Categories is, I think, the game, where you have to find words that match all these criteria. So as you can see, this number 1 spool is in this yellow and this blue. So you have to find something that is green and scary or something like that. So everybody has to write down a word that is both of those things. Now, you get extra points if for each of the different rings that are around it. So the more difficult the word to pick, the more categories it's in, the more valuable it is. So everybody will write down as much as they can, and there's an incentive system if you're the first person to get these done. So if you have all your words down first, then you're able to take this like extra bonus 4 points, which is pretty significant. It's like a tiebreaker essentially. And so you get that tiebreaker token. And so you're trying to race for these. And then after everybody has taken and written down their words, you're going to go through your list one at a time. You'll read, okay, what did everybody get for number 1? And then everybody actually is going to be giving you the thumbs up or the thumbs down to see if what you said goes into that. We had one the other day. It was scary, purple, and large. We had people putting things like Thanos, people putting like Grimace from McDonald's. It was really funny to see the creativity and what people thought was scary. It turns out obesity is pretty terrifying. So that ended up getting a thumbs up for a scary, purple, and large. It was really funny just to see the creativity here and the different ways that people think. And playing this with children is even more so because some of the things that they can think up of are like, I have never heard of this, or that is a really interesting way to go about this. And it's such a creative use of language and just in general, like this, it's so cool to see what people can think of in a high pressure situation. And I think it's really well done. It's a beautiful system. As you lay everything out, you're getting comfortable and familiar with the board. And then it's just a fun experience as everybody talks about their own ideas. So I really like Nitwit. I think it's just such a good experience. Like I haven't rated it. It needs to be, I honestly, for this kind of game, this style, I would say that this is a absolutely wonderful experience. I'd probably put it at a 9. This is a very awesome game. Wow. I'm so impressed, and it's like only rated to 6 here, and I think that's a crime. I think this game is absolutely wonderful. It's great in my opinion. Have you seen this? Have you heard anything about it?
I've seen it when I'm trawling through gaming websites and stuff. I had no idea what this was the gameplay. I had no idea at all this is what the kind of game this was. And this looks right up my alley, and I'll definitely be checking this out because I love these kind of these word style games.
It's beautiful. Like, I mean, every bit of component, you have these really nice cardboard tags. You have these buttons that are these nice chunky wood. There's an awesome picture here where you've got these clips that are just, they pop. Everything pops. And your paper you're writing with is this black paper, and you're using this white colored pencil to write on it. So that even pops. It just feels quality. I've had students ask to say, Mr. Frank, can we keep these papers? Because I just really like the paper. I wanted to bring it home because this was such a cool thing. And I just think that's neat. Oh man. Sorry. And I cut you off in the middle of your.
No, definitely said this is right up my alley. And I had no idea this was the kind of game it was. So I will be looking for this one now. So yeah, thanks for bringing this one to my attention.
Give it a try. It's so cheap right now. You can find this for like $15 because just people have not bought it. And I think it's very much your situation is people don't know it exists. I had no idea what this was. They pulled it out. Some friends of mine, I was just like, whoa, what is this? Amazing. So quite impressed with this one. And I think more people need to check it out. So that's Nitwit.
Fantastic. Okay, so the final game I've been playing is a game called Startups. So staying on the theme, I think, on games that people aren't so aware of. However, this one is a game by Oink Games. So Oink Games are pretty popular, and they're making their tiny little box games. I know a lot of them are very good. Some of them are not so well received, and I will say this one is really good. So I'm massively impressed with this one. This is a really clever game. That's one of those games where all the decisions in this game are uncomfortable. So you don't really want to take any action because whatever you do inevitably helps somebody else. So I love those style of games. No matter what you do, it's just painful. And again, from start to finish, you just don't want to engage. It's awful, but in a good way. This one is a game where you are trying to basically dominate the controls or the shares of these different companies. So you've got all these different companies there you can see on the box. You've got this like Hippo Technology and this Giraffe Beer. Really, really good like iconography and stuff. But the actual mechanisms in this game are so pure as you are trying to, as I said, collect these cards, and some of these cards only have, or some of these suits of these cards only have, let's say, 5 cards in them. Some of them have 8, some of them have 9 or 10. And yeah, the way you collect these cards is that you either draw them off blindly from the top of the deck and add them into your hand of 3 cards, or you can take cards that have been kind of discarded in previous rounds, and then put them in the center of the table. And then whenever anybody takes a card from the deck again, then they'll be putting one of their points tokens on each of the cards in the market, the ones that have been discarded. So there's this real incentive that gets building and building and building of these cards that nobody wants, to the point where you have to take them. And I love that mechanism anyway. And this one has some additional kind of wrinkles to it, because whenever you take a card, you have to play a card. So you can either play it in the market, or you can play it in front of you for scoring. And when you play it in front of you for scoring, if you have the majority any time in those cards, then you'll take this Monopoly token, which means that whenever there's a card of that type that you have the Monopoly token of in the center, then you cannot take that card. So it really does block you from completely running away with things. And but at the same time, you get kind of a boon by saying that when you do draw a card off the face down stack, you don't have to pay a coin on that company. So it's just that little rule is very clever, I think, in itself. But I love that decision of, am I going to really go for the majority here? But I don't want to get too much of a majority, because I want the other people to have a share, because I don't get any points unless somebody else has a share. Mm-hmm. So it's extremely clever. It gets very confrontational, or at least head to head in terms of competition to get these shares. And the ideal situation is that you would have 5 shares in a 9 company, and somebody else has 4 shares, because then you'd have that maximum. For every share that you have to pay a coin to the owner of, and they get flipped over into 3 coins as well. So I've probably made a botch of this, explaining it. I made it sound a lot more complicated than what it is. But it's extremely elegant. And I said, if you like those really hard decision little card games, very clever, very nuanced, games that spring to mind, games like Hanamakoji, games like those really, really natty, small margin for error games. And this is right up there with the best of them. I highly recommend.
So this is that positive stress that I love in these little card games. Yeah. As you just described, all those games, Arboretum comes to mind. These are games Absolutely. That are just like, they're easy to table, but also extremely thinky. And with Tiefe, I think you mentioned it really well here. That incentive system is wonderful. I love that in games just in general. So I like that they have a unique way of implementing that here. This looks so good. If it's this or My Farm Shop, this is probably the one I'm going to check out. Honestly, yeah. This is definitely this is hitting all of my buttons. So cool.
So I'm confident you'll like this.
Definitely. Okay,
15 to 20 minutes as well. 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh my gosh,
it is amazing.
Okay, that's it. Awesome. Thanks again for costing me a couple of dollars. I'll do with it. Let's do it. Anything else you want to add on this one, Dan?
No, just said if you want to fill a game, 15 minutes, but still have some thought behind the game, this is one to check out.
Awesome.
And no shelf space as well. Tiny little box.
That's true. One of the cool things about Oink games. Now, the next game that I want to talk about, last one for this, what we've been playing, is one that has been out for about 10 years now. So it's got a bit of, it's a bit dated. However, oh my gosh, I just keep playing this and I keep enjoying it. It's one that I recently discovered this summer. This is Tiefe, and Tiefe is absolutely wonderful. I love this system. The game is such a weird theme. You play as, like, I don't even know how to describe it. I'm just going to read it from here. Defend the city and rise to power by influencing the merchants, knights, and clergy. There you go. I got a theme now. So that's what we're talking about here. But the big thing here is just the brilliance of the design. So it's got a great round structure, great pacing, and the way it works is you're basically gathering these dice and you're using them to take actions. And the different actions here are all based on the cards themselves. So for example, this one here, it says that if you use these red dice, you're going to be able to divide the total amount of those red dice you've used by 4. So if you have, for example, you take a 6 and a 3 and a 5, that's going to be 14 divided by 4. That's only going to get you 3 actions, but you could do this action 3 times. So it's cool because the values matter in different ways. You're trying to combine values, and you can use your dice and others, and it just makes for a really interesting game. And that's the core mechanism. And there's all these other little things that happen as you play that are just neat. They're cool. They're unique. They're different. This one really stands out. And, this game's 10 years old now, more than 10 years old, and no one has really copied a lot of the stuff in this game. And I find that so surprising because it's still so fresh, so different. I discovered this, after it's released, a decade afterwards, and it's brand new to me. It's like, whoa, these are fresh. I love this. This is so neat. I love the event system. And one thing that really stood out to me, I played a 2-player game of this and played multiple 2-player games because I really enjoyed it, was the fact in a 2-player game, you get multiple identity cards. There's a key feature in this game where everybody is going to get essentially a private scoring objective, but everybody is going to score for it. And I think that's wonderful. So you might have to be looking for a specific type of building. You might have to be looking for a, help out with the cathedral the most. And you don't know what the objectives are. And if you use the Ladies of Twa expansion, it's going to have even more of these potentials. And I think I honestly think Ladies of Twa is an essential expansion for this because of that fact in general. Because in the base game, there are only like 6 different cards, but in the expansion, there are 9. So there's more to kind of pick and choose. And I think that's great. But in 2-player game, both players get 2 cards. And so you have even more things that you're kind of looking out and trying to predict. And if you're able to figure it out perfectly, it just feels so good. I was playing last game, and my whole goal was to get, for my cards, were to get the up to 15 influence, something like that. And you get that by defeating people or helping the church, and also just help the church. And I had played a game where I was just kind of collecting coins and building out into yellow spots. And I had totally faked out the person that I was playing against, and they thought that those were my 2 scoring cards, but not at all. Which it felt so good at the very reveal to reveal my 2 scoring objectives, and then to be completely off because they were making sure that they had saved some money, and it felt so good to be able to pull that off. It feels great. So I know you're a big fan of Twa. Tell me, what are your thoughts on this one, Dan, and anything else that I need to be doing, or what other things should I do to explore this game?
Well, honestly, I'm not great at this game. I do love it, as you said. It's definitely probably a top 25, 30 game for me of all time. I absolutely adore it. And as you said, I think we've been talking about it before we started recording, about how this game is 10, 11 years old now, and there's nothing else like it at all. I know that it's been kind of redone by the same people as the Black Angel, but that core kind of dice drafting mechanism, or not dice drafting, but you have your dice, but you can take the dice of somebody else without their permission. That's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, but for some reason it works for this game. And that's normally something I would hate, but for Twa, it just feels right. This one, I think if there's ever an example of a game that's so mechanical, I mean, you can actually see the gears work in this one. It is just, it's so dry, but in the best possible way, as you're even like dividing these actions between the money you're spending and stuff. And it's very mathematical, but for some reason it has a certain magic to it. It's very fun, despite the way it looks, etc. Might look bland, but it's not. It's vicious, but it's vicious in a good way. It's amazing, and one of the best Euro games out there.
I totally agree. I'm having a blast with Twa, and it's just so fun. I really like this one. Now we have some comments from Tim this morning. I think he's harkening back to startups. Loves games that have something on each card, so you don't pick card marker. Yeah. So I like that. So you see this in games like Terra Mystica with those incentive systems. I really like this system. Or Praga. Praga has this with its wheel. Love it.
Yeah, one of my favorite mechanisms, definitely.
Totally agree. It gets you to do strategies you might not normally do, which I really enjoy because there's that invisible incentive. So I really
I love it as well. I really love it when there's cards that are really awful and they're in games like this and they just build and build and build and build to the point where you just have to take it. Yeah, great mechanism.
Yep. Totally agree. All right. And we're wrapping up our things that we've played section, and we're moving into our crowdfunding picks. So we're going to talk about a game each. And remember, most of the time, if we're doing this, it means that we're actually backing these ourselves. There's things that we're actually extremely interested in, things that are on Kickstarter right now, or, maybe in like a couple hours. So it's something like that. So go ahead and start us off, Dan, with our crowdfunding picks.
Okay, so yeah, my pick on this episode is probably not to everybody's taste, and it's not going to be the hotness or going to create a huge amount of buzz, but it's my style of game. This is a game called Pergamon. The second edition. This is being reprinted by I think it's Eagle Gryphon. Yeah, Eagle Gryphon Games, who are known for I suppose their Vital Lacerda games, and they recently did Rococo. Very big, lavish.
Sale.
So what was that one? The
For Sale.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, For Sale, yeah. And this one is, well, actually, talking about For Sale, this one is by the same designer as For Sale. This is a Stefan Dora game. This is a game that I think it originally came out 10 plus years ago. A kind of an archaeological themed game as you are trying to collect these different artifacts to score points in different ways. However, this one does have a really interesting mechanism, again, that I haven't seen before, where you are basically having a couple of cards drawn, which will show the kind of a certain amount of money that's going to come into play that round. And that money is going to be in a range between, I think it's like 5 coins and say up to 12 coins. And you're really taking a kind of a speculative punt on what's going to be the value of the coins. And then you're placing these kind of workers on this track across the top here. And the further to the right you are, I think you're going to be coming first in terms of getting money from that kitty. But you don't get to take as strong actions. Whereas if you go towards the back of the queue, you might not get any money, but you get to take a stronger action. But of course, you don't know how much money is going to be in play, so you might still get the whole bunch of money that you wanted to get in the first place, but still have to take that strong action. So it's got that kind of push your luck style mechanism to it, which sounds really interesting to me. And there's some kind of basic set collections. You're putting these different artifacts next to each other, getting victory points. And that's it really. It's a 2 to 4 player game, takes about 40 minutes to play. And these kind of under hour Euro games are really kind of hitting the table for me quite often recently, and seems to be the kind of flavor of the month. So really happy to get my hands on a copy of Pergamon. So yeah.
So it looks like this Kickstarter as a whole, like I've never heard of Pergamon ever. So this is neat. I like that they're refreshing this old design, which is awesome. And then this one in particular, it hasn't reached its funding goal yet. What do you think about that? It's got 10 days to go left, but it still hasn't reached it. What do you think?
I think it had a relatively short time frame. I think it's only been up for a couple of days, so I'm sure it'll get past that finish line. It's not got too much to go, if I'm right. I think it's in the last 5% or so. So I'm sure it'll get there. I hope it does.
Now, are you going to go in for Armonia or Sagani either?
No, I'm not. No, I've just gone for the Pergamon and the Pergamon only. Yeah.
Okay. And then what do you think about Kickstarters that have something like this, where it's like a bundle of games? Do you like the style? Does it pressure you to get the other games?
Not personally. No. I mean, I just tunnel visioned on the one that I wanted, and I think the other ones are more widely available anyway. So I think this one just coming back into the fray is what caught my attention. So yeah, I've literally just completely phased the other two out of my sight and just tunnel vision on Pergamon.
Gotcha. No worries. All right, so that's Pergamon, something that Dan is actually backing. Amazing. So it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's going to be quality. So exciting. I'm glad you're getting those into your gaming group. Exciting. And then we have a comment from Tim. He says, on toi. Doesn't know if the game's going to be mean. He wants it to be gorgeous. Now, I don't think this game is extremely mean if you go into it with that attitude of like, okay, I have... Oh, am I cutting out here? Oh, can you hear me okay?
You're right. Yeah.
Okay,
fine.
Sweet. So I don't think this game really falls under the category of mean. It does have that mechanic where you can borrow dice, but I don't think it's extremely terrible. It's very much everybody does it, just something to be aware of, and you're going to get some money and income out of it. So I don't think it's absolutely terrible.
It's definitely a mindset thing. It's a mindset thing. If you go in with the mindset that these are my dice, then you are going to feel it's a mean game. If you say these are dice that I have access to, but other people do as well, they're going to have to pay me to get them, then it's going to be a bit more palatable. But yeah, it definitely is a mindset thing in my opinion.
Totally agree with you there. Now, my game that I want to talk about today is one that's going to be actually out in about 3 hours. So 3 hours from now, this is Voidfall. This is the Mind Clash games here by 2 designers, Nigel Buckle and David Turchi. And the reason I'm so excited about this is I've been having so much fun with Imperium Legends and Classics. And this is the same design team who's behind that. I know you weren't the biggest fan here, and this is going to be a 4X game. So I don't know if this is something you're interested in either, because this is a Euro-inspired 4X game. But I think that this looks amazing. I think it looks super fun, super exciting, and the artwork is stunning. It's by Mind Clash. This is the same studio who's done Anachrony, and that's a game that I absolutely love. I love how the complexity is so bearable. I'm just having a blast with it. But this one in particular has just the idea that you can play this 4X game cooperative or competitive using Euro-inspired mechanisms. that just sounds fantastic to me. I am excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to see everything about it. And I really don't have much that I can show you outside of this, but I just think that it's something to be aware of that exists. It's deterministic combat. It's once again Euro mechanisms, so it's more controlled. I'm pumped. I think this looks fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I'm going to have a proper look at. So I generally, as a whole, really like David Terzi designs. So yeah, I'm going to give this one the full look over, and definitely going to consider backing it if it does tick those boxes that I'm looking for. So yeah, I've not written off the fact that it was a Nigel Buckle and Terzi calibration again, because I didn't like Imperium, but I'm not going to let that tarnish my view on this one. I'm going to see this one in its own regard and take it from there. So yeah, I'm definitely an open book on this one.
Perfect. Glad to hear. And yeah, that's what I'm for sure backing. I'm backing it for sure, but maybe I don't know. We'll see what happens if it becomes a campaign after I read the rules and whatnot that I might not be interested in. But generally, a lot of these large designs from Mind Clash, I'm always excited to give a try, and they generally hold their value. So I don't think it's going to be that risky. So of a back, in my opinion.
Yeah, true.
But exciting. So those are our crowdfunding picks. Let's go ahead and move on to our next section of our show today. And that is going to be for news items. Now, Dan, what's your news item this week?
My news item is that there's no news. That's as far as my news goes.
All right. So that's Dan's section for his news item is no news. All right. Now, my news is super goofy news. This was a very light week for news, in my opinion. There's some stuff that we could have talked about, like Asmodee's selling, and just very small like game releases. But I wanted to talk about the smallest game release, the release that's just, it hasn't done anything. It hasn't excited. It hasn't shook the world. It just is. And this is going to be for the game Bag of Chips. Now, Bag of Chips is by the same company that did Ramen Fury. It comes in a plastic bag that, get this, looks like a bag of chips. And guess what's inside? Any ideas?
Oh, I couldn't possibly guess.
Chips. So lots of different chips. So auctioning chips, bidding chips. It's got chips for days. So we've got all this stuff in here that it looks like it's just a standard. It's a crazy looking hand management auctioning game. We're going to be collecting all these tokens, but I don't really want to talk about the game, if we're being honest. I want to talk about the packaging. Now, what do you think about games that come in this awkward packaging? Just initial thoughts. If you got a game that came in a literal bag, how would you feel about it? That you tear it open?
I would not like that at all. No. I like having girls. I like order and games I can organize easily. Not just this. No, not for me. Negative.
I'm sorry to hear this. And then Fatal Papercut says, breaking news, there is no news. That is all. I agree. So in my opinion, oh man, if you got a bad box, that's just going to be an obstacle to getting it played. Your presentation is going to be low. It's going to be just something that you're going to be like, oh man, I got to pull this thing out, or I got to store this thing. This might be something you just throw on a shelf just because it sits there. Ugh. So I could just imagine this being an issue just with its usability as a whole. And it's something that you're obviously going to take out of its old packaging and just put where it belongs. So it's one that I think is super. I hate it. I hate this so much. And I shouldn't, because if the game's fun, it's a great little gimmick. But I just wanted to get your opinion. If you're here in the comments with us this morning, please let me know. What do you think of these super awful? I'm sorry. What do you think of these interesting game containers? So if you're here this morning, let me know. And Tim's correct. Does sum up your thoughts?
Yeah, pretty much.
Excellent. I'm going to stop my cam really quick and then open it back up again. I don't know why. It's like flickering on my end. Do you notice any?
Okay. Yeah, you jump in visually, but audibly, you're perfect.
Okay, so let me take off my camera here for a little bit, and we'll see if this hopefully fixes. All right, but that being said, let's go ahead and jump to the next section after our riveting news segment, and this is going to be card and component appreciation. So this morning, what do we have? Let's start off with you, Dan. What are we talking about?
Yeah, I've gone for something a little bit different and something that's really not really related to the game itself, but I still think it's an idea that I'm really surprised is not vastly or widely used. So this is from the game that I recognize it from was a game called Tiefe Taschen, which is a negotiation style game where you're trying to get as much money as you can and kind of bluff things and extort money out of other people, but that really is irrelevant to the actual component itself. So the component I'm actually talking about is it's basically this card that shows how many or how big the deck in play is going to have to be depending on the player count. So you literally just have a deck of cards and you're going to put this little measuring card next to it to show how thick that deck is. And it doesn't have to be exact. It doesn't have to be precise. But you just get rid of all the cards that go above that line, and then you can go from there. So I just love how this facilitates getting the game to the table and set up so much quicker than it would be if this wasn't in there. And it's a very, very simple thing, but I think it's a very clever little natty design that I think is very clever. So as you can see there, the little card. And there's a little gauge next to it, and it shows just how big that stack needs to be. So and I didn't realize that Mackenzie brought it to my attention that the game Spicy actually uses the same system. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So you don't have to spend your time counting out all the cards individually to have a precise deck. You just use that as a rough gauge and get going.
I love it. I think this is a great little mechanic. You don't have to do any counting. It's just you put them right next to each other, size it up, slap it down, and you're good to go. So I really like it.
Surprised this isn't used more often because it's so simple but so clever.
Totally agree. Love it. All right. So my mechanic I want to talk about is from, and just right off the bat, I really enjoy Tiefe Taschen. It's a blast. It's one that's been hanging out in my gaming bag for a while because we've been having some larger game nights. Tim, you're killing me. I love it. Oh my gosh. All right. So the component that I want to talk about. So it's a component this week, this mechanism/component appreciation. This is a new one that I had never experienced before. And this is from the game via Palleti. Have you played this one?
No, I haven't.
So I had never heard of this. It was pitched to me as reverse Jenga. Instead of just destroying a tower, you are building a tower. It's a dexterity game, but we are looking at this. So this is the hook. So the game itself has you creating this large tower stack. And the way you're going to be doing this is you're going to be pulling these rods. And you can use your hands. You can use those if you want. Or you can actually use this hook here. And you simply wrap it around and you pull the pieces in. So I think that's a really fun way to do this. It offers you a tool. And I've never seen this in a dexterity game like this. I know Fuzzies has tweezers that you can use to pull things. But I love the idea of this super obnoxious hook that you literally will stick into things and pull out. And I think that's so funny. It cracks me up. So I'm having a blast with this. And it's just one I think is hilarious. Have you seen anything like this in dexterity games?
No, I can't really. Said most of them are just your fingers, aren't they? So that's cool. It looks good. Yeah.
Excellent. And that's our mechanism/component appreciation. So that's component, right? Component/card appreciation. Whoops. Yeah. Mechanism comes later. So we'll talk about more of those in a bit. That being said, let's go ahead and jump to our next section. Sorry, having a little bit of internet connection issues, particularly with my camera. I don't know what the issue is here. So let's go ahead and move on to the next piece. So we're talking about, what are we talking about, Dan?
This or that, I believe. Is that right?
You are correct. So this or that, this is where we talk about two distinct topics in the gaming industry. In particular, we put out a poll last week on Chairman of the Board's community tab. He asked a couple of things from his community, and so our community as a whole, and just a question that we want to know the answer to. And the question that we put out last time was a three-way question, our first one about it, and this one was a battle between three different games in the same trilogy, the West Kingdom trilogy. So we wanted to know, what do you think about these three games? Architects of the West Kingdom, Paladins of the West Kingdom, and Viscounts of the West Kingdom. So with that being said, what do you think the results were, Dan? And just give me a reminder, what was the game that you picked out of this slot?
Well, I've actually only played the one out of the three. I said that my gut tells me that I would like Paladins more than the other two because it reminded me of a game called Orleans, which I really love. And I think we both said that we thought that Architects would be the winner due to its more accessible, and I think more people bought it. Simple as that. So it's more on more people's shelves than the other two.
And I think that you were totally right here. It's the answer is clear with 46%. Architects of the West Kingdom is the forerunner. So this one is pretty sweet. I totally agree with the consensus here. And exactly as you described, this is definitely the most inviting of all of them. Easiest to get to the table, easiest to play. And I think it does a great job with its quick little changes on the worker placement mechanisms. So it's one that I've been enjoying. And it's just one that I'm having a lot of fun with.
Mm. Yeah, cool. So they're immensely popular. All three of them are done very well. But yeah, the original is clearly, captured more people than the others. So yeah.
You got it. So the next topic for this one is going to be for another battle of board games. And these are two of my favorite games. I really enjoy these. And I'm curious to where you stand on them. And let's go ahead and just say it. Our competition for this one is, oh my gosh, I'm so behind. We're on this or that. Whoops. our competition for this one is between two fantastic games. This is going to be Maracaibo versus Great Western Trail. So Dan, right off the bat, first initial impressions. I think I already know where you're going to be leading on these, but what do you prefer between these two games?
Yeah, this isn't a close one for me, to be honest. I'm a much bigger fan of Maracaibo than Great Western Trail. No knock on Great Western Trail; it's a solid game. I think maybe I was a bit of a victim to the hype of this one because it was massively successful and hyped before I got to play it. And I played Maracaibo before it, so maybe that played a bit of a factor. But yeah, for me, Maracaibo has that kind of stocks and shares mechanism, which I really love. And I just like it more in general. So yeah, it's definitely a shoe-in for me, Maracaibo.
Now, Maracaibo, I have to agree. It's amazing. So this is one that every time I play it, absolute joy. But I also really like Great Western Trail. So both of these games are great. But I think Maracaibo just has that variance. It has this great progression as you play with your different tableau cards you're making. And that's the big difference here. In Great Western Trail, your progress is on the board as well as in this kind of custom deck that you're building. But in Maracaibo, you are consistently building these powers and abilities in front of you. You have all of these awesome cards to play from. And it's a hand management game as well, where you're kind of mixing things around. And I really enjoy that. I have to give it to Maracaibo as well. Maracaibo is in my top 10 games, period. I think it's just absolutely wonderful. Great Western Trail is up there. I also think this is a wonderful design, something that I always enjoy playing, particularly with that Rails to the North expansion. But I got to give it to Maracaibo. In Maracaibo, what's your favorite type of card to use in that game?
Ooh, you know what? I really enjoy doing or really piling up or combining the powers of the adventure track. If you go there and they compound on each other, so you can stack them, so you can really go travel through the jungle really quickly. I like that one.
Glad to hear. I really like those explorers as well. I also really like they're called, what are they? Smugglers? I believe they're smugglers or tradesmen, something like that. It's whenever you visit them, you can discard cards of multiple types in order to get extra money and stuff. So I like that it adds into the hand management aspect. So you're trying to save specific icons, and it makes buying cards from that central row a little bit more important. So I really like that system in Maracaibo. It's just a blast. I really like the card play. I really like the story-driven aspect of the game. I like how the board is evolving. So every time you play, it's going to be a bit of a different experience. It's going to lean you in order to do different strategies. And I'm so excited for the new expansion here. I think it's going to be a blast. So a lot to love in Maracaibo. But I also think Great Western Trail is a lot of fun, and particularly with that new edition that just got announced and is releasing right now. I think that it's going to be a great one that people can continue diving into. But we're curious to know what you think about these two games as well. Do you prefer Maracaibo? Do you prefer Great Western Trail? We'd love to hear what you think. Look in our community section for this question for this next upcoming week. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Anything else to add on this one, Dan?
I know we said what we want to win. What do you think is going to win?
Good question. I think that Great Western Trail has been out longer, and I think that it's one that people have played a lot of. and it's one that people enjoy. Obviously, it's rated extremely highly. That's a good question, though. It's more of like, what have more people played? I think that if you've played Maracaibo, you're going to notice just like the evolution from Great Western Trail that it is.
Yeah.
So I think that if you've played Maracaibo, you're going to vote Maracaibo. If you haven't, you're going to probably vote Great Western Trail. So it's just a matter of what has our audience played, and that's a difficult question on its own. So we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're right there. But despite that, I'm still going to think it's going to be very close. But I think Maracaibo will just squeak the win.
Let's hope so. It deserves it. That game is absolutely amazing. And then Tim has Tim has a comment here on Architects of the West Kingdom. Joyful tropes, fun worker placement rules. Couldn't agree more. I think that it is a wonderful light game and a blast. I think it's my favorite of those light systems from the West Kingdom and North Sea trilogies. So I really like this style of game. So that's our this or that section. Let's go ahead and move on to our next section here. This is not component or card appreciation. This is our mechanism appreciation this time. Let's talk about a couple of things that make games great. So Dan, what do you got for me here? What are we talking about first?
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'm going old school with Lost Cities. And the main mechanism I'm going to go for is the fact that when you play a card, you automatically start with negative points. So if you're not aware with what Lost Cities is, this is a two-player game. It's one of the pioneers of that tug-of-war system where you are trying to either win certain factors of the game where your opponent is trying to do the same thing, and whoever kind of controls more of something, you get more points. But this one, despite it being one of the originals, still feels extremely unique. I can't think of anything that does this, where you have these different suits of cards of different colors, and they're all numbered from, I think it's 1 to 10, and you are going to be playing them on their matching sides of the board. However, as soon as you play a card, you automatically start with minus 20 points. And you got to keep on playing these cards, and obviously you got to play them in order as well. So you can't just go from a 2 to a 10 to an 8. You got to go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But of course, you can jump spots. But when you're jumping spots, you are really kind of backing yourself into a corner, hoping that you get particular cards. Because again, if you don't start getting into those, going above 20, then you're going to suffer negative points. And I also love the fact that you can kind of invest or take a punt in getting amplified versions of that by playing these handshake cards. And if you play these handshake cards, it will kind of double or triple your score. But that also applies if it's negative. So if you end up with a -3 and you actually played these two multipliers, you can actually score up to like minus 9 points. It's a very, very clever game, and still holds up very well. And that one system of automatically being negative points means you can't just keep playing cards without much thought. You really do have to pick your battles and kind of take a educated guess on what you think you can win, and not just play cards willy-nilly. And I like the way that you can. There's so many different ways you can win this game. You can go from a wide approach, or you can quite comfortably win just by playing one single type of card. I've seen it done. So yeah, very good game. It still stands up really well. That is Lost Cities.
Now, this is one that I've played a couple of times. I remember maybe years ago, but it's not one that I've returned to. It fell in that category of games for me where it's a two-player game that I was probably just never going to play. So it's not one that I picked up, whereas things like Arboretum and that other kind of crunchy style game of decisions and committing cards falls into for me. But this is one that I want to play again. It's, as you described here, you have that tense decision. And I love that when you commit, you are committing. So I think that's really cool on this middle row here. I love that style. I love that system. So great pick, Dan.
Cool. Thank you. What have you got, Mackenzie? What have you got?
All right. So the one that I'm talking about here has to do with a game that I'm actually going to be getting rid of soon. It's one that I really enjoy, but it's time for it to go. And this is the game Tainted Grail. So the thing that I enjoy most about Tainted Grail here are the card systems. So this game is a giant story narrative-based game where you're going to be going from place to place, kind of Seventh Continent style, traveling from card to card. And when you get to these cards, you're going to be either doing these combat actions actions or these diplomacy actions. And the way they're done is you have these decks of cards that you'll shuffle up and you'll be customizing them as you play. So when you do so, you'll be drawing in a combat 3 cards and you'll play them into this kind of timeline in front of you. So you play one card, and that card is going to have an effect that you get to use. So for example, like this one here, and you'll get effects based on these icons on the left. So for example, this one says that you get to draw cards, and they're actually going to match up. So if I played this card first and then played this card, as long as I have these 2 symbols on like my skills that I've been leveling up, I get those tokens in damage. Does that make sense? So like this is here, so I would get to deal 1 damage. And there are some things on the bottom here that have multiple tokens, but if they have an X, you don't get anything. So if I play this card right after, it'll only deal 2. But now this one is going to deal 1 times, and sometimes they might deal 2 times. And then at the end of the round, they have passive effects. So maybe the enemy will deal extra damage, but you get to draw extra cards. Or maybe they have instant effects where once you play it, you'll lose some of your stamina, and then in return, you get to deal more damage. So you have to pick and choose how you're going to be pursuing these different combats. And I really like that system. And it's pretty much the same thing for the diplomacy, except in just a little bit different way. So the creatures have that kind of system, and the diplomacy actions have something very similar, where you're going to be kind of going up and down this track instead of just continuing to play off of something. And then you have, at the end of the round, it's just going to keep on pushing you down or doing some other negative effect. So you have to pick and choose as you play what you want to pursue. And I think that's a really cool system here. I really love the card play, but ultimately in Tainted Grail, that is the big standout for me, is that card play. And I would love to see it implemented in other games. I know that the new Witcher board game, the adventure board game, is going to be using a system similar to this, and it's one that I want to give a try. Have you seen this system? Have you seen any other games? I'd love to hear what you think.
No, I haven't seen the system actually, but this sounds really cool actually. Combat in general in games is always a one of the sticking points for me. I generally don't like dice rolling combat games, and I'm always wanting to see something that's a bit more deterministic and a bit more clever. And this looks like a really, really cool system that I've never seen before, completely fresh. And yeah, you're right. This definitely has legs to be used in other systems and other games. So really, really interesting.
Yep, totally agree. It looks like we also have some super fans. We've got Corinne here from Super Blonde Nerd this morning. Thanks for joining us. But yep, totally agree. I think Tainted Grail is a wonderful world. And this combat system, this is the reason that I'm really sad about letting it go, is just because I think it's so cool. Obviously, some characters' cards are better than others. So that's also something that plays into it, because sometimes you might fight like, a little rabbit or something, and your character might just have some really bad cards. So you might have a really tough time trying to take out a little rabbit, but then you move on to something even more intense like a bear or something, or some mystical creature, and you have no chance to take this thing out. So you have some interesting choices here, but it's a game that this system is just so good. And if there was a game that was just this, I think I might have a blast with it. It might be something I pull out a lot. So that's my game here. That is Tainted Grail and the card combat and diplomacy systems. All right.
Cool.
Our next section here is the Board Game Geek Randomizer. So I am still pretty choppy. Yeah, Dan, can you see that okay?
Yeah, you're fine right now, but yeah, you are a bit jumpy, but again, audio is perfectly fine.
Okay, I might just take off my audio, or my my person. We'll see. Stop if I can. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into our next section. This is the BGG Randomizer. So we're going to take a BGG page here, and we're going to go ahead and say, hey, let's get a random game going. So let me pull up BGG and let's do this. What are your thoughts on this week? What are we getting?
I think this is going to be a big mess today. I think we've actually lucked out on the last few episodes. We've been all right, but I think it's time to go back to the most obscure of the most obscure. What have we got? You still there, Mackenzie? No, I feel like we might have lost Mackenzie. Is signal? Oh, I can hear you now. Yeah, sorry, you went a bit quiet there for a minute. Oh, I think we've lost Mackenzie. I'm sure he'll be back shortly. So I'm afraid you just stuck with me for the interim. So obviously we weren't prepared for this, so I will just maybe talk about something else that I've been playing in the interim. So yeah, in addition to the other games I've been playing, I've also gotten a few older games, actually. One called Mikarinos to the table. Mikarinos is an older Istari game, one that hasn't looked dated so well in terms of its visual appeal. Looks very beige, what you'd probably expect from the older Istari games. But this one actually has some cool mechanisms that still hold up pretty well. So this one is one of your standard kind of almost abstract area control style games with your cubes onto the board. You're trying to block people from taking over these certain tiles, and then at the end of the round you are going to be evaluating who's controlling these different regions in terms of having the most cubes on them. And then on the back of that, you're going to be flipping these tiles around, and you're going to be evaluating what the people who's got the majorities are wanting to do with those tiles. So the first thing you can do is you can either use them to use the powers of that character on the reverse side, or you can actually use them to invest in the museum, which means that for each character you collect of that type, then you are going to actually get more scoring multipliers on the back of that. So I think as a game, it's held up really well. I think if it had a visual overhaul, it could look a lot stronger, but still, really solid game that's still worth checking out. So if you're interested in your older dry Euros, then go check out Mikarinos. So let's hopefully Mackenzie's back with us now. So
yep,
Mackenzie,
I'm back. So what did we hit for the randomizer? Did you do it already? Did I miss anything?
Oh no, I haven't done it.
The connection.
No, that's okay. No, I haven't done it yet. I was just filling the space there with some other games I've been playing. That's all.
Okay, no worries. Sorry about that. We're having some issues here, so I'm not sure what's going on. All right, let's go ahead and do our randomizer for today. Random game. Let's go. Thanks again for sticking with us this morning, even through all these technical difficulties. Oh, Tim says he bets it's a promo card. Let's see if Tim is correct. So here goes. What do we have for today? Mortal Gods, Athenian card set, and rules booklet. Tim, I think you are correct here. This looks like a promo to me. This says the necessary cards to add an Athenian warband to Mortal Gods. So it looks like this is a system for Mortal Gods skirmish games in ancient Greece. Shall we check out the core game, or shall we look at this one first?
Let's go for the core game.
Okay, so that way we can see what's going on.
Yeah.
It looks like this one is let you use an additional faction, but let's go ahead and take a look at what Mortal Gods is. So Mortal Gods, skirmish games in ancient Greece. Let's take a look. Have you heard of this system? Is this something that you know of? I'm curious.
No, I haven't heard of this system. No.
All right, by Andy Hobday. Came out in 2019, so fairly recent game. It looks like this is a miniatures combat game. As you can see, you've got some sprues down here that we'll be assembling. Let's take a quick look at the description here. So Greece has proven her might, and the forces of the vast Persian Empire have been repulsed. Each city-state believes it played a key part in the victory, and this newfound pride has brought about rivalry, greed, and conflict. So skirmish tabletop game, 15 to 25 models on each side. Select your forces around a leader and some companions, swift battles, bloody battles, groups of warriors, defend your outposts, protect important characters. You're going to acquire new skills throughout the game and even catch the eye of the gods to gain victory. So these are the choices that you place in ancient Greece. So standard skirmish style game with a Greek theme. Makes sense so far. Let's take a look at some of these components. Have you played any large skirmish games? Is that a genre that you ever dabble into?
No, I've not really played much games like this. I mean, when I was quite a bit younger, I used to play Warhammer Fantasy and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
And I think I played a lot of it over the years and got quite exhausted with it. So I haven't really didn't kind of revisit that style of game. But yeah, maybe a more skirmishy style game would be more up my alley nowadays. Smaller scale.
So we got sprues for days here. So it looks like you'll be assembling some miniatures. Do you have any practice in that, Dan?
What's that? Making models?
Making models.
Yeah, I've done probably about 1,000 over the years. Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
But I don't think I'd have the patience or time for it anymore. Unfortunately, I did enjoy it though at the time.
Gotcha. Well, I have to do this a lot for Kingdom Death Monster, but I'll be honest, it's not my favorite thing to do. But it looks like we've got our core system here, lots of grouped miniatures, some dice, tokens. It looks like some card play, which is cool. I like systems where you're integrating multiple things. So I like this idea of a card-based system to move your dudes around.
Yeah.
What do you think of the theme?
I like it. Yeah, I like it. It looks pretty polished. I love the box cover. I like that kind of, historical context. I think it looks like a pretty polished product, to be honest.
I agree with you. This looks solid. I love the way that it's painted. I'm not sure if it comes painted, but man, these look good.
No, I don't think so.
False advertising. But it does look great. You've got lots of different activation markers. You've got Mortal Gods dice, damage dice, six-sided dice, activation, slingers, peltons, so lots of different unit types, lots of cards, lots of rosters for your different characters. I like this terrain. It looks pretty sweet. I like the style, and it looks like you can add some fantasy with your Skeleton Warriors set, which just looks super fun. So I like this. It's cool.
Yeah, it looks like you'd expect from a more established, war game company or publisher. So yeah, fair play.
All right. And then we have some questions in here. Have you been able to play Mr. Jack Pocket? I can't speak to this. I have not played this one.
Yeah, I have, Tim, actually. I managed to get a couple of games of that done. Quite impressed with that. Actually, how much it managed to achieve with such few components. Very small footprint. Still has some decent deduction in it. But yeah, more thoughts on my my monthly roundup, Tim. So keep an eye out for that one, and we'll talk about it more.
All right. So let's go ahead and move to our next section. Anything else you wanted to add on Mortal Gods, the skirmish game?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So if you are to jump into a skirmish game, Dan, I actually would recommend you jump into Super Fantasy Brawl, actually. I think that's a very approachable skirmish game. I'm not sure how you would do with, there's some randomness in the game, but a lot of it is like deterministic combat, which I really like. So I think that's a fun system. It's one that I've been having a lot of fun with, one of my favorite games from 2020.
Okay, cool. I also, in addition to that, one of the games that appealed to me on that, the idea is the one that you have the all your units are on the back of cards, so you don't actually have miniatures. You just have your kind of you'd expect what you'd expect from a miniature,
but that would be
rather than physical miniatures. I can't remember what it's called, but it's got a generic name. But that one looked quite cool as well. Oh, have we lost Mackenzie again? Oh, I think we may have lost Mackenzie again. So apologies for the technical difficulties today. Mackenzie, if you can't hear me, I can't hear you, and I don't know if that's the same in reverse. So apologise for this, people. But thanks for. Oh, there we go. We've lost him officially. So I think Mackenzie's just starting his computer again while we just reanalyze things. So I'm going to go on and to the next segment where we're going to talk about our A to Z, or A to Z if you're from the States. So I'm going to start with my lighter game. In fact, on this example, I've got two lighter games, so nothing terribly heavy. And I really did struggle with the letter of the week, or the letter of the episode, J. So I don't know if this applies to everybody watching. I find it really hard to find letters beginning with J. Not many out there, not many I've played. But the first game I wanted to talk about was a game called Jaipur. So Jaipur, I think, is kind of regarded as one of the classic two-player games. Generally, really well received. This is a trading style game, as you're trying to collect these different spices from the market, which is in between the two players. And you can either, I think you can either take a number of cards, or you can kind of swap ones you have with the ones in the middle, or you can take all the camels and replenish the market. And all these kind of goods have different values on them. So you've got like very common leather, and you've got really rare, like your diamonds, etc. And you're incentivized to not only sell them quickly, because if you sell them quickly, you get these bonuses for selling them quickly, but you're also incentivized to sell them in bulk, because if you sell them in bulk, you get a bonus token which will give you more and more points depending on how many you sell at once. If you sell 3, you're going to get a lot smaller value than if you were to sell 5 at a time. But yeah, I think it still plays really well. Extremely smooth, back and forth. Very very approachable, I think, and still has some decisions there. I think there's an element of frustration where sometimes you'll take from the market and it will really benefit your opponent by flooding it with better resources. But generally, I think it's still a solid game that plays pretty well. And you can get 3 games of this done, get the best, best two out of 3 in half an hour or so. So a really solid 2-player game there with Jaipur. So I can see Mackenzie's back now. It's Mackenzie. I've just to let you know, I've started our A to Z and started with my lighter one with Jaipur.
Perfect. Awesome. So I will go ahead and jump in next. Anything else you want to share on Jaipur before we continue?
Not really. I will say that although I like the game, it's definitely not one of my favorite 2-player games anymore. I think it did have a shelf life more than some other of the kind of the famous 2-player ones, but I still think it's way better than average, and definitely worth checking out if you are more maybe introducing somebody to the hobby, etc.
Gotcha. And do you have the new edition or do you have the old edition?
I've actually got none of them anymore, but I did have the older edition.
Gotcha. And thanks again, everybody on the stream, for sticking with us. I've had some issues. My computer restarted, so hopefully the camera works a little bit better. It looks like it already is, so that's nice.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll see if we make it through. So thank you so much. All right. So Jaipur, I think is a good choice. Like you said, it's a very solid 2-player game, above average. It's a fun time. I really like it. I really like the camel mechanism. I think that's my favorite part in this whole game.
Agreed. Yeah.
So let's go ahead and jump to my lighter game here. And this is one that constantly is played. It's a fantastic take on the party game genre. This is Just One, Spiel des Jahres winner. Fantastic game. It's so simple in what it does, but no one had ever done it before, which I think is crazy because it's so awesome. This is a game where you're going to be writing just one word, giving clues to a person to help them guess. But the twist is, if you match the words, then both players that match the words actually have to lose their clue. And I think that's really awesome. Great little twist here. It's going to make you think out of the box with your clues that you're giving. And it just makes for a lot of interesting play because you have these words you might not necessarily be using, but combined, hopefully they give you a big, broad picture of what you're talking about. So in here, we've got a pool, football pool, car pool, diving pool, inflatable pool. I love it. These are awesome, great ways to give a hint for this in multiple fashions. And no one got matching ones. And I think that's pretty dang impressive. So it's pretty neat. Have you played any games of this recently, Dan?
Not terribly recently. I played the hell out of this game. This is one of my go-to games to play with my parents. Still think it's great. Timeless design, so simple. And as you said, how was this not designed before? 2019, whatever it was. Yeah, really, really solid design.
Now, in this system, I don't know if you've played with it, but in the goodie box for Essen of that year, since this is a Spiel des Jahres winner, most of the time they give promos for the winners. Now, this one got a promo for all the nominees and the winners get promos, but this one got a promo, and the promos are all game related. And oh my gosh, don't shuffle those in with the regular cards, because if you're playing with somebody gets Uwe Rosenberg and they've never played board games outside of this, they're like, what the heck? We were playing a game of this the other day with some seasoned gamers, and we had accidentally shuffled in the cards. And the first card they pulled off was Uwe Rosenberg. And we were just like, oh my gosh, they don't know that we're playing with this game variant. And we're like, oh my gosh, are they going to get it? Oh, my friend Jenna, she was a legend. We gave her clues like Bonanza, designer, things like that. And she, the first thing she said was like, is it that Uwe guy? No, it's not that guy. And then we were all like, oh my gosh, it's got to be, oh my gosh. And she got it. Oh, it was so impressive because she was able to figure that out. But it's so interesting playing this game with gamers using those game-related terms. So fun. And it's really neat because you'll start using these terms and seeing these games and designers you might not have thought of before. I think it's really fun that there is a very niche set of cards that you can use in the game. And they have a different colored back, so just be aware if you do use them, you have to kind of play with them in their own separate pools, so don't mix them in with the regular ones. But really neat. I think it's a lot of fun to play with gamers, and it adds a neat little spice to it, interjecting all of that gaming vocabulary. So I really like that. It's really fun. So that's just one fantastic party game.
Yeah, brilliant game. Okay, so my heavier, and I said it's not heavy at all, to be honest. Really did struggle for Jays. So did you struggle for Jays in general, Mackenzie?
I did. So you'll notice in my heavy game that it's like, this one, I think I had 7 Jays, and one of them was on your list, so it was like, whatever. So I totally agree.
Yeah. So yeah, this isn't a heavy game. This is Gateway Plus. This is actually a recent game, one that probably should have been on my games I played this since the last episode, part of the show. This is a game called Juicy Fruits. So Juicy Fruits is a 2021 design, as you can see there from the page. However, this one has some pretty cool things going on in it and some pretty interesting mechanisms. The main way of which is how you're going to collect resources. So this is a game where you're collecting fruit and then kind of fulfilling contracts with that fruit to get victory points. So very simple. But as I said, that core mechanism of how you're going to collect the fruit in the first place is fascinating. So as you can see here from the board, you've got all these different squares with different fruit on them, and you're going to be moving those pieces of fruit around like one of those old kind of childish puzzles that you play when you were a kid, moving things around, sliding them up and down these horizontally or vertically. And however many spaces you move is how many of those fruit you collect. And as you can probably imagine, the more you kind of move these around or shift them from place to place, you can create longer runs where you can move fruit further and end up getting more and more in a single action. And in addition to that, the actual contracts which you're trading the fruit to achieve are around the outside of the board. So the more of these you complete, you can actually move those contracts off the board, meaning that you can get more spaces to explore with those tokens. So again, you can get maybe 4 of fruit of the same type with a single turn. And you are just basically trying to get as many points as you can. It's a very fast game. You can get a game of this done in half an hour, lightning fast turns. Some pretty interesting decisions in terms of investing in these bonus tiles as well, where you can kind of get these more versatile tokens, which you can slide around, which can get you, maybe your choice of 2 different types of fruits in however orientation you want. Or you can even get these big chunks of points, but they will act as big blockers that you have to put on your player board, meaning that you don't have as much flexibility to move your pieces around. Very accessible, fun, fast, charming, nice components, nice and bright and colourful, and just a really pleasant experience for me. That is Juicy Fruits.
Wow, glad to hear you like this one. Do you recommend this to somebody who is into heavier style games, or is this more of a gateway style friendly game?
I would say it does fall more into that gateway style game. I'm not sure if I would get this out with a bunch of gamers around the table, but if I'm playing a casual night, maybe with some players who aren't so versed, I would definitely consider getting this one out, because despite it being simple, you still do have to think about how you are moving around this board. So there is an efficiency puzzle there, and no matter how experienced you are, that's always going to be tricky to navigate. So I think games like that generally are quite versatile, and I would say this is pretty versatile in that respect, where even if you are playing with a bunch of less experienced gamers, you are still going to get a lot out of this, and you aren't going to be rolling your eyes and just taking going through the motions, etc. You are going to have to think about what you want to do.
I know that you have very high standards. This gets a place in your collection for right now?
It's staying in the collection for now, yeah.
Excellent. Glad to hear. All right, and then my heavy game is also a very family-friendly game. This is a fantastic dexterity game and one of my favorites. This is the game Junkard. So I love this style of game. This is such a cool game where you're going to be creating these large pieces, but you're going to do that with these really funky shaped blocks, and they can be wooden or plastic, but the big thing here is you're going to be visiting locations, and each location has a challenge associated with it. So for example, you may go to Paris and everybody's building on a single base. You may go to New York, and all of a sudden you are using these cards to draft pieces, and it depends on the location you go to, the challenge that is presented. And generally the challenge is going to have you stacking these pieces in some specific way. But my favorite part about this game are the cards. So in this game, each of the pieces has a card that represents it. And so when you are playing, you're going to be drawing from this deck, and each challenge is going to use those in different ways. You may be giving the cards in your hands to other players and trying to give them pieces that don't work well for their structure. You may be using them to play kind of a trick-taking style game, and if you win the trick, you get to decide which pieces go out to each person. You may be using them to have a public drafting pool, and those are your options for the round. There's lots of creativity in the scenarios in this game, and the gameplay itself is straightforward and fun. It's not always just, make a tower, stack it up. There are some where you have to be very creative, and the amount of cool things you can do with these pieces are there's so many neat things you can do with this. I really like this system. I love the way the pieces fit, and I love the different things here. And we've got Corinne here. She says, a more complicated Jenga. And I would have to agree with that. And I think the fun here is the complexity because that rule set is so simple. Because it's literally on your turn, you take a piece, you have to use that piece, you move it around, but then adding those extra bits from scenario to scenario, I think is a blast. And your points from one scenario carry over to the last, and try and do the best out of three. Super fun. Love this one. You played this one, Dan?
No, I haven't played this one actually. I'm not that well versed in all the dexterity games out there, but definitely what I'll try. Probably on that list of games I'd love to try, but probably won't buy. But yeah, definitely be willing to try it out. Looks cool.
Gotcha. This is one of those like mainstay dexterity games, in my opinion. It's one that we really pull out more than anything else, just because it is so good at what it does, and it does it in so many different ways. So I really like this one. That is my J junk art. So really like this one. Give it a try if you enjoy dexterity genre. All right, now we're actually going to back up a little bit, and we're going to jump into a section we skipped, and this is our why is this in your collection? Now, this is where we take a look at each other's collections and we say, hey, why do you own this game? Please give me the reasons, and why haven't you got rid of it, or why is it so good? So it can be kind of a positive or a negative. Dan, I'm going to have you go first on this one. What's a game that you're thinking, Mackenzie, why do you own this?
Okay, yeah, this is one that I actually...
You seem really excited. Go ahead.
No, it's again a more intriguing thing, and I think this for me is a game where the theme would hurt it, but I know it's pretty much what the game is all about, and I think you're going to say the opposite. This is a game called Fog of Love. I struggle to think who's going to get this game to the table. When are you going to bring this out? Who are you going to play it with? What experience are you going to get out of it? I think it's a weird game that doesn't really... It's quite niche. I think I can quite comfortably say that. Again, I've not played it, but what are your thoughts, and what goes through your head when you could pull out a game of Fog of Love?
So Fog of Love for me is a game that I only play with one person, and that's my wife. So we play this game. We don't really play it that frequently, if I'm being honest. Like, the more we've played it, the more that we've kind of stepped away from it. Because in this game, it's a role-playing game, right? You're going to have this loose system that you're focusing on trying to complete some form of goal. And that comes in the form of these, like, they're kind of like mission cards. I don't know the exact name for them, but the whole premise is you have some type of outcome that you're looking for, and that comes in the form of these cards. So, for example, your whole goal might be that you are extremely happy in the relationship. That's your whole goal, and you need to stay together, and that's your own private objective. Your goal might be you're trying to leave the relationship. You don't want to be in this relationship and you want to leave, and that's your whole goal, is to break up. Or your goal might be that you stay in the relationship and your happiness of both partners is the same. And so as you play the game, you're able to add these objective cards to your hand, and then you're able to discard them. So you're kind of your objectives are getting narrower as you play, and you're kind of forming it based on the experiences that you're having. And I think that's kind of interesting because it kind of simulates that kind of dating style where you're like, okay, I have gotten into this relationship and I have all these things that could come from this. And then as you play and interact with the person, you start to think, oh, this person is a good match for me. I hope that we can both stay happy. Or, oh, I got to get out of here. I'm out. So by the end of the game, you're trying to leave the relationship. And it does so in this very dramatic way where you start the game off. And this is my favorite part of the game, is the very beginning, where the game begins with the other person picking your traits. And it's done so in a like, ooh, I've noticed this person, and here are the reasons that I'm interested in you. It's like, oh, I saw your eyes, and then I saw your face, and ooh, I saw your piercing, and you're playing these 3 cards that are like your physical features and maybe your job and whatnot. You're getting to know them, you're talking to them, and these are the initial things that are kind of turning you on to them. And it's so interesting. It's such an interesting theme. It's done in a very specific way, but the game itself is when you play this, you can't focus on winning the game. Your focus should be on experiencing the game as a whole. As you said, who do you play this with? You play this with somebody that is going to be willing to do this role playing. And once again, it's a very specific thing where and once again, this is something my wife and I play, because this is something that we're comfortable with, this level of intimacy as well as this level of role playing. And it's something that we can enjoy and we can have fun with. I don't know if I would ever bring this out with, I invite my friend Jeff over and we play this together. I don't think this is going to be something that I'm going to do, but So that's kind of where I'm at with this game.
Okay. Do you think this one is so deep in the theme that it could or couldn't be rethemed?
I think this game's mechanics are they are this. So I don't think you could really
Right.
retheme this. It's built on this system of a evolving relationship. So if this is not a thing that's going to work with you, I would stay away from it. But I think it does a great job exploring its theme. There are lots of these. There's 3 scenario packs that come in the box. There are also more that you can get that kind of customize things. Like one of the more recent ones is an in-laws scenario, and I think that's so fun because not only are you trying to focus on your relationship status, but you also have your in-laws that you're worried about, and like, how are you going to treat them? Do you care about them? And that could be one of the cards you pick. You're like, yeah, I don't care what my in-laws think. Or do you think that appeasing your in-laws will make your significant other happy? And so you have to pick and choose. It's very interesting. I think there's a lot of creativity and freedom with this design, and it's one that it's fun when we jump into it, but it's not one that we play all the time. And I really only will play it with my wife. It's not one that I'm gonna really branch out from that. And Corinne says that she's heard the same thing. I enjoy playing it as a couple, and I think that's it. It's one that you have to be willing to kind of get into that mood and focus more on the experience as opposed to the game, winning the game. So have I given you any thoughts, opinions? Is this one you might try with your significant other? Anything like this?
No, I don't think so. I mean, because I would get the vibe of being opposite. You say you play it with your significant other, but for me personally, I think that would create problems because it would kind of blur the lines. When you're doing something that the character would do and you wouldn't do, etc. It's just a recipe for a disaster. But it's very, very fresh. I suppose very innovative and more of an experience, as you said. But I just think it's a fascinating game, fascinating idea and concept, but maybe not for me.
That's really funny. It totally does happen where you'll play and your character is like, oh yeah, my character is an unemployed dude that his trait is that he's arrogant or something like that. And so you're acting like awful the whole game. And the other person's just like, wow, I see how it is. It can definitely be like that. So I think that as long as you know what you're getting into, or I guess in this case, not getting into, I think that's the way to approach this one. All right, Dan, my game for you for this week is a very highly acclaimed game, and you have it rated pretty dang low. And I'm curious as to why you have it in your collection still, why it's rated low, and just your general thoughts. This is for the game Oriflamme. So I want to know your opinions on this one. It received a lot of accolades and was nominated for quite a lot of awards. So I'm curious, what are your opinions on this one?
Okay, so I'm not quite sure what I have rated at. Probably about a 6, is it?
Something like that, 5 or 6.
Okay.
Pretty low.
I personally don't consider 6 being that low, but that's
Okay.
that's just me. This is a bit like what I mentioned earlier, a bit like Spirit Island. I found this one very hard to put my finger on how I feel about it. I think in terms of this is a game of kind of intrigue. You're playing cards either face up or face down. They all have unique abilities on them. You've got some take that by taking other players. You're trying to get coins different ways. Some of them accumulate money when they're face down. Some of them, when they're revealed, they get money based on the current queue of cards there. You can see all interact with each other in quite interesting and unique ways. I think maybe the more and more I'm kind of diving deeper or more experience I'm getting with the hobby, I'm kind of not enjoying these games as much as I once did, or this style of game. However, I do think this one is a good one. I think it's better than most games that try to do this thing. But I think there's games with the kind of got you moment sometimes don't sit that well with me. I think it's more of a personal thing. I don't think it's a knock on the game. I think the game delivers what it promises to do. Beautiful looking. I love the artwork of this game. One of the favorite bunches of artworks that I've seen. But I would play this one. It's relatively quick. I'd play it, if somebody chose to bring it to the table, but I probably wouldn't suggest to play it. The reason why it is in the collection, to answer your question, is this is my brother's game. We share a collection. He enjoys these style of games more than I do. This is kind of more of his wheelhouse. But I'm happy to play it anytime, and it's a solid example of that genre.
Perfect. All right. So that is, I mean, just in general, I'm not. I don't know how to approach this one. So this one is. I guess I'm just not familiar with the mechanics very well either. So how does it actually play? What are the big things I'm looking for here?
Right. Okay. So essentially, you have a bunch of these cards, and they're going to be semi well, pretty much identical to what the other people have got, but with a few exceptions. So say out of this might not be exactly right, but say you have 10 cards to start with, you're going to be playing with 7 of them through the round, and those few exceptions might not correlate with the other people. So you've got some exceptions and some crossover with the other players, and then you're going to be playing cards onto into this row basically. So there's going to be a card to play in the center or to start with, and then you're going to go either side of that, and you're going to keep going. And then once everybody's played their cards for that round, they are going to be going. I think it's from left to right or right to left, depending on which round it is. You are either going to keep that card face down and put a coin on it, or you're going to choose to reveal that card. And if you reveal that card, it'll do things. If it's the archer, it will kill a card on either kind of on the polar ends of that line, or if it's an assassin, it can kill the character next to him. Or some cards will say, if you reveal this card and it's the assassin, whatever, it will, they steal money off you. So it has this kind of bluffing. Some of them you want to keep face down because they acquire money. Some of them you want to be the only card of that type when it's face up. You've probably seen a lot of games that do this kind of thing with these unique roles, and this one just uses this queue system in a kind of to make it different, I suppose.
Gotcha. So I like it. It's kind of like a programming, but like a public programming game. It's neat.
Yeah,
I like the system.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment.
Nice. Okay. So, all right. So it's this style of game. I think this might be good for, a light game for large groups of people. As you said, your brother enjoys it. So different crowd, yeah. But this one looks cool. I think this is one that I'd probably take a look at. Pretty highly rated, pretty highly praised, and I think it falls into like this coup or style like that style of game.
Absolutely.
Looks neat.
It's I would recommend it if you like those style of games. It is certainly a good one. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. I might actually look into this one. Right now, it looks like it's fairly cheap, so I might give this one a shot. Awesome. Cool. And that's our section here for why is this in your collection? Now we move on to our last section of the stream, and this is going to be our audience question. So last time on Dan's channel over at Chairman of the Board, make sure you're subscribed there. We've got a audience question out there, and this is how many crowdfunding projects a year? So this was our question here, and we were just kind of wondering, what's the general consensus on your side? Now, Dan, how many crowdfunding projects would you say? Just wants to kind of catch back up. How many crowdfunding?
Personally, I said probably around 8. I'd say 8 is as a general. So maybe roughly one every 1.5 months. Let's just say something like that.
Gotcha. And I remember my number was very inflated. It was like more than 40, something like that, something ridiculous. So that is not normal. That's a lot of crowdfunding games. Oh my gosh. But I mean, those are like most of the games that are coming out that interest me, for being real. So I'm always constantly on the lookout for potential new amazing games that are on those crowdfunding systems, because we do get all that extra stuff, and that's a pretty big deal for people who are trying to get the best experience out of games, and that's kind of what we're offering here at SideGame. So it's an interesting one. Let's go ahead and take a look at what the audience said and what the community thought here. It looks like the consensus is about 1 to 5 a year, which is, once every other 2 months. I mean, for most people, that makes sense. And this is kind of where you fall, right, Dan?
Yeah, maybe just going into that upper bracket, next bracket into the 6 to 10. But yeah, I'd say so. I think I've only backed maybe 2 or 3 games this year so far. So maybe I'll be in that 1 to 5 bracket this year.
And one of those was the Gardens. What were the other few?
So I've done the Gardens, Pergamon, which I mentioned.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
Yeah. I'll have a look, actually. I'll get my phone out. So I can answer your question more.
And now that I'm asking this question, you're saying you back 2 to 3 projects. Why do we even have a crowdfunding section on this thing?
Well, yeah, it's such a big part, and sometimes you do get that absolute gem out there, and even though sometimes I don't personally back games, sometimes my brother does back games.
That's true.
So we get, maybe together we'll fall towards maybe into that 11 to 20 bracket. So it's just something I've over the years I've become a lot more reined back on than maybe I was in previous years, because normally they come out at retail anyway. So, but
Very good. Very good. I was looking at Cocapelli the other day. That's one that you got recently, yeah?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I was looking at Cocapelli and I was looking at the differences between the editions. And it looks like the only difference is just like the acrylic Cocapelli figures themselves from the Kickstarter
that's
and the
right.
retail. So I was
Yeah, that's
thinking,
right.
is that significant? I was curious. I was like, no, it's not. So I don't need to hunt them down. Okay. Because I
Absolutely
think
not. No.
Cocapelli is one that I do want to give a try, and I'm excited to look into that one. But that
Yeah.
being said, let's quickly wrap this up. We're going to go into our last question. It's our new question for this week, and this is all about conventions. We just finished Gen Con. We have Essen coming up soon, but our question for you is, how many conventions do you go to a year? So in the comments here, you'll see on my community page in the future a poll that you can vote on and let us know about how many conventions a year do you visit. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. What do you think, Dan? How many conventions are you in?
Oh, well, obviously, being in the UK, we don't quite have the convention scene that you guys do. We do have the UK Games Expo, which is pretty big. It's in a massive arena in Birmingham. It's one I definitely go to every year without fail. And other than that, I've been to a semi-local one just up the road, which is just more of a gaming thing, not very, very small, literally just one little table full of exhibitors. But that's it really. I mean, I'd like to go more. I think I'd like to branch out and try some different ones. But normally they're way up country for me. I live right on the the southwest coast, right at the bottom. So it's normally quite a trek for me to go somewhere. And so it's not the easiest thing for me to do. So it's kind of, I always make sure I secure my weekend off to go to the UK Games Expo every year, and that's pretty much me done. What about yourself?
So for me, I don't normally go to the larger conventions. That may change the more that this YouTube thing, I guess, evolves. If we get like press badges, or if we have these more solid relationships with publishers. But generally, I don't really see the value there for myself. Generally, our conventions here in America are more focused on the buying of games as opposed to the playing of games. If you do play a game, it's generally like a turn for the demo, just so you can like see how it barely plays. And usually, you're not making decisions; you're just running through a script, and that's not something I really enjoy. I feel like it's more of a waste of time, and I would rather just buy a bunch of games and play them at home. Right? I don't really see the thing there from the personal side. From the business aspect, though, I do love going to local conventions. I do a lot of volunteering for conventions here where I'll show off the library, set up a bunch of demos, and just play games with people. And that is a lot of fun, in my opinion. It's there's this high school that does a convention, GameCon, every year over at Rampart High School in Colorado Springs. And I love volunteering at that. And you just get all these kids that are just excited for games, excited to play, and just getting people aware of these really neat games. Some big hits that we have there are Catacombs 3rd Edition is a blast. People love the flicking dungeon crawlers. Last time we did it, we had this gigantic line out the door for it, and that was so cool. I love that experience. Anything that has to do with some quick-paced action, people really enjoy these large, dudes on a map style games. There's something satisfying about like a 12-year-old controlling an army, and they feel really good when they can push people out. So I really like this system. Kids are having a lot of fun with it, and it's something that I enjoy going to, but I mostly locally. So 4 conventions a year. These last 2 years haven't gone just because of the lockdown situation. But before then, I was going to maybe 2 or 3 a year. So some of the local ones. But it's been a blast. I really enjoy it, and it's something that I'm going to continue to pursue, is pushing into these local conventions. Now, before we continue, I did want to cover the comments from our video, because I want to make sure that we include these here. And these are from your page about our previous question. So that has to do specifically with the how many Kickstarter projects a year. And this one is a lot in 2019, with some haven't shipped, and he's kind of been dropping off, which makes sense. Like, you're not getting these games, why continue backing them? And then that's from Morgan here. And then we also have Mark saying that shipping is ridiculous, so it's not worth the Kickstarter backing. So I think that is also extremely important, right? Some of these, especially with the shipping crisis, we have incredible amounts of money that we're going to be spending on these things. So we got to be very careful in what we're actually buying. So anything to speak towards that, Dan?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a. I don't know if this kind of thing is growing or declining now. Obviously, with the whole shipping thing going on, it's a bit muddy waters at the moment. We don't quite know what we're going to get, especially when some campaigns are coming out asking for more money after you've already paid. That's, I mean, I don't quite know what to think about that. I mean, ultimately, we've paid what you've said we need to pay, and that should be the end of it. I know they're not enforcing it, but I think it's a bit cheeky to ask. You kind of knew the risk. You should have done your research, but yeah, hey, I don't know. I think it's going to still continue to be a big part of the hobby. Whether that's going to be an upward trend or a downward trend, I don't know. I suppose time will tell.
And I think that these two comments back to back really sum up the Kickstarter experience. Don't do Kickstarter. Where's the vote for way too many? So I think it's definitely going to depend on the person. Depends how you approach this hobby, and I think that these two are very straightforward. So it cracks me up. Tim here, he's excited for our new poll results. Excited to learn. So are we. There's a lot of interesting things here, and I want to know, like, based on the person, what makes you excited to go to a convention? So be on the lookout for that in our community tab. How many conventions a year do you run to? Feel free to put comments down in the description of this video too. We'd love to hear your opinions in general. But that being said, that is our show. That is everything here. Dan, before we go, is there anything you're excited or looking forward to playing before next time?
Yeah, so I've actually managed to kind of filter through all my newer kind of new games that I needed to get to the table. So I've got a lot of kind of more stagnant stuff on my shelf that hopefully I'll get a chance to get around to playing. I might start reading the rule book to maybe even Gloomhaven, the Jaws of the Lion.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll get around to that one. I just had Streets delivered, talking about Kickstarter. So this is the newer version of Village. I don't know if you're familiar with that one.
Yes.
So yeah, the Streets has just been fulfilled. So maybe I'll get around to playing that one. And then yeah, other than that, going to hopefully get some older games to the table.
Exciting. Awesome. This week, I think on Thursday, we have delivering a new expansion for Marvel Legendary that was supposed to be out like last April. So that'll be fun. It's the Annihilation expansion. So it has to do with all of the Fantastic Four members. So excited for that. That one just sounds great. And then hopefully we have our copy of Gigapolis coming in as well. And I'm excited to play more of that. I love that game. I just want to play some more. So it was tied in with a pre-order of that Annihilation expansion. And obviously we expected it like half a year ago. So excited to finally jump into it some more and get it played, because after the first play I was like, ooh, we got to get this one. So it was a lot of fun. So I'm excited to try that out. But that's our show. That's everything. Thank you for joining us for this morning and for sitting through these technical difficulties in general. Thanks so much, Dan, for being here and for really carrying us today. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for being here and for your comments and just everything. We really appreciate the community here. So once again, please go check out Dan's channel over at Chairman of the Board. He puts out incredible content. I love his thoughtful reviews. I love his recaps just in general. He puts out amazing stuff. So go check out Dan's things. And yeah, if you have any other questions or comments, please put them down. Dan, anything before we leave?
No, just thanks again for everybody for joining us. I know it's not the best time for you in the States, but unfortunately, timetable-wise, Mackenzie and I are very jarring. But we do what we can, and hopefully, if you can't make it now, then catch us later. And
you got it.
We do what we can.
And we'll keep on putting out this fun stuff, and we will be active in the comments section. So please feel free to engage with us there. We love communicating. We love talking to our community. You're fantastic, and we wouldn't be here without you. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Side Game Strong, y'all.
Bye, everybody.